He worked for a while for NBC News in San Francisco, and then worked in radio in Sacramento. Evidently actually had an afternoon talk show, which I thought was pretty wonderful. He did that until 1972 when he came to KGW Radio in Portland as news director. In 1974, he moved to KGW TV as a reporter, and in 1976, he became the weeknight news anchor. From 1981 to 85, he was KGW's regional bureau chief in Washington, D.C. However, in 1985, he had a vision and came back to Portland, again as KGW's newscast co-anchor. His reporting feats have earned him numerous professional awards, and in 1993, however, he turned his back on his role as a TV program maker and became a viewer, analyst, and critic as the TV radio columnist for the Oregonian. All of us value his role as interpreter of this media for us, and we turn to him today to introduce and moderate our panel as they discuss high-definition television. Please welcome Pete Schulberg.
Thank you very much, Fran. And it's true, I guess my education did prepare me for my career, but I don't know if anything prepares me for this new digital age that we're about to enter, and I guess that's why we're all here today. I got it pretty good here today because I do not have to explain why your TV set is going to cost anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 to $11,000. You name the figure, and maybe we'll get more from Peter on this. I don't have to describe just how better your TV picture and the sound coming from your TV is going to be, or if it's really necessary that the picture of, say, The Price is Right has to be that crisper and the sound has to be that clear. To me, Bob Barker looks fine just the way he is, but apparently he's going to even look better as he gets older. We'll hear more about that. I don't have to guess if Tony Danza's next sitcom is a shoo-in because of this new digital age, or in fact, when we reach digital, if Brooke Shields will actually become funny. I don't know the answers to any of these questions. But I do know that there's going to be a lot of change, major change, that a lot of us, and I include myself, don't know a whole lot about these changes, and again, that's why we're here today. We know a little bit, and I dare say even the professionals and the people involved probably cannot predict with great accuracy how this is all going to turn out. So that makes it very, very interesting. So let me, without further ado, introduce our esteemed panel, and we're going to have them come up here and speak for maybe, 5 minutes or so, and I've been known to get out the hook, so, because we do want to make this interactive, to use a modern-day term, and get to your questions. But first of all, Peter Fannon is a gentleman who, if you've read up on digital at all, you know the name because he's been active since, well, practically day one. He is the chairman of the Citizens for the HDTV Coalition. He chairs this coalition of consumer and senior citizens groups, labor, manufacturers, retailers, trade press, which was organized to promote U.S. government adoption of the new digital high-definition television broadcast transmission standards and the implementation of those standards. He came to the coalition after 8 years as president of the Advanced Television Test Center. The Test Center was created in 1988 to support the public evaluation of advanced TV broadcast proposals submitted to the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, and its advisory committee on advanced television services. And before joining the Test Center, Mr. Fannon worked in public television. He was president of the National Association of Public TV Stations, which he helped establish in 1980. So we're anxious to hear what Mr. Fannon has to say. Our second panelist is a woman who's been living here in Portland for some 2.5 years. She, Lucie Fjeldstad, is the at Tektronix. She is the president of the video and networking division for that company. She came to Tektronix after 25 years at IBM, where she brought multimedia to that company. And right now she's involved in developing hardware and software for the equipment that TV stations will need to bring us all digital. So we're looking forward to hearing what Lucie has to say. And finally, a gentleman who is certainly no stranger to us, and an old acquaintance, well, not old, but an acquaintance of mine. Maynard Orme is the president and CEO of Oregon Public Broadcasting, which includes 5 TV stations, 4 radio stations, and in fact has just built a digital transmitter. He's been with OPB since 1986, and prior to assuming that role, he was general manager of the San Jose, California PBS station for some 13 years. He is the past vice chair of the PBS Board of Directors, the past chair of the Organization of State Broadcast Executives, and he is currently vice chair of America's Public Television Stations Board of Directors, and I might say is very up on the whole digital universe. In fact, Maynard was one of the first people I talked to when I just seen this digital situation come up and trying to discover and figure out what it all meant. So we've got a good panel, and Peter, let's start with you and hear what you have to say. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Pete. A pleasure to be with you, ladies and gentlemen. My job is to give you a quick overview, if you will, a bird's-eye perspective of digital and high-definition television. In effect, high-definition and digital TV appear to present a revolution in television as you know it and communications as we use it. For all intents and purposes, digital broadcasting will create a whole new television system that will be dropped in on top of the conventional system we've been relying on for the last 50 years or so, will work in parallel with it for a period of 10 or 12 years at least, and then eventually supplant it, leaving us with an incredible new capacity that can carry not just television and television pictures, but any kind of information that can be packaged and turned into digital bits, zeros and ones, the language of computers. In effect, this means that terrestrial broadcast distribution, where local communities receive local information as well as nationally distributed information, will now be able to compete on an absolutely level technical playing field in quality, content, and even reach with all other media, which are already going digital. For example, DSS, direct satellite service, is already digital. Cable systems are upgrading to provide digital transmission through their cables to your home. Various telephone company experiments are underway, and wireless cable systems are already providing digital service. And the new digital video disc is the latest step in prepackaged media, all digital. What digital means fundamentally in television is the same thing quality-wise as it meant in CDs. In effect, you will receive at your home the same quality picture as the TV station transmitted. No more noise, no more snow, no more ghosts. That's because when you send digital code over the air and your smart television set takes this smart signal and converts it back into the picture for you to watch, it can eliminate all of those transmission artifacts that you've lived with. If you live at the far edge of a conventional television service area, as you know, sometimes it's hard to tune the station in and you have a lot of snow. You can hear the sound of the baseball game and maybe you want to watch it, but sometimes it's so snowy that you can't even see the baseball. In this case, if you can get the signal at all, if you're within range of the television signal, you in your home will get the same perfect picture that the person who lived just a few miles from the transmitter will get. In addition, not just clean pictures, but high-definition television pictures are coming your way. These are pictures that you've just had a chance to see, I hope, as you came in, and will on the way out here in the back of the room, provided by our friends at KCTS in Seattle, public TV station, and the folks here at Oregon Public Broadcasting. These pictures contain 5 times the content information of today's television. There are 1,000 lines of information instead of under 500, and there are 2,000 points of information on every line. So you have a minimum of 1 million pixels and up to 2 million pixels, 2 million points of information in every picture versus today's maximum of 200,000. In effect, that is a very dense clustering of information whose structure and brightness and clarity is so strong, it's more like looking out a window than looking at a TV screen. When these pictures are blown up on great big displays that 15% of American households have today, They don't weaken with the size. They're stronger. In effect, it's a whole new viewing experience. So when you're ready to buy into HDTV, you'll have a much stronger and much more enjoyable viewing relationship. But interestingly, behind the picture in television lies this digital code and the neat tricks of digital transmission, so that in addition to just sending television as you know it, and please God, better programs than sometimes we currently get, you'll be able to see, use, and store in your computer, in your television set, in new recorders that will be coming out at the same time as the new sets arrive on the shelves, all kinds of other services. For example, you will be able to have educational material that goes along with the program you're watching, so that after you've watched the program, you can review the content, look more deeply into the subject at hand than the pictures alone could tell, and turn it into a much richer experience. Another example, even while you're watching television, if you're channel surfing and not particularly lighting on something, you could tune in and find literally the latest stock ticker updates, latest financial news, weather, sports, traffic information, things that literally you call up on command rather than waiting for someone else to editorially decide when to bring it to you. In effect, this is a huge change for communications. It gives terrestrial broadcasting the chance to compete with other media, thereby giving us as consumers the opportunity to have both choice in content and in cost. It's a mechanism that allows us to use the airwaves more efficiently, providing an opportunity not only for single high-definition pictures or multiple standard definition pictures all on the same channel, but even while the pictures are going on, tremendous new data services. And finally, I think it provides an extraordinary opportunity for those in the education community, like in Oregon Public Broadcasting, I'm sure you'll hear more about this from Maynard Orme, to use this capacity to the fullest extent. Suddenly, every single station becomes a mini network. It has the capacity to provide multiple choices simultaneously, to expand its audience and bring more viewers into the television experience that they're providing. Similarly, with commercial broadcasters, and goodness knows, they're big sponsors, advertisers, it gives them extraordinary new capability to both show you the products with their full color, texture, brilliance from the advertiser's point of view, and to attract you to the channel with the power of new, crisp, sharp, high definition, and digital television pictures for basic programming. All in all, our coalition believes strongly that this is an opportunity, while long in coming, that Americans will seize when they have the chance to see it. And to Pete's question about cost and when, next year at this time, TV sets and HDTV sets will be appearing in the market. By the fall and Christmas season of 1998, we expect that digital high-definition television sets will be the big seller. And by that same time, approximately 35% of the American public will be able to receive 3 separate network-originated television signals in digital. And 1 year later, by the fall of 1999, we expect that nearly 50%, in fact a little over, about 53% of the population will have multiple choices of the new digital service on the air for them to enjoy. So with that, I'll turn back to the panel.
Good afternoon. We at Tektronix are very excited about the HD world, high definition world, in part because our customers include cable companies, telecommunication companies, and as importantly, all television stations around the country and ultimately around the world who are going to have to make massive investments to bring you what Peter so eloquently described as high definition television. We also work with content providers. There are many potential benefits of high definition, quality being one, number of channels and a variety of new content being the second. But of course, somebody has to create that content. If we look at where the world is, or I look at it, I guess I can personalize it, I believe that where we are with high-definition television and the next big leap into new capabilities is about analogously to the same place we were with the first television set. When the first television set was created, what did people do? They looked at it, but they didn't know how to maximize the use of that new capability. So they took vaudeville acts and radio, dressed them up to costumes and sets, and that became television. And it wasn't till several years later when a B studio called Columbia, that nobody had ever heard of, made all the changes to television to bring it to start the catapulting of what it ends up being today. So whether you like it, what you get out of it today or not, when it began as a medium, the only thing people could think to do with it was to take what they'd done before and move it over. So what will happen for a while is a lot of what you see will be more of the same with better quality, or a new way of doing education, or a new way of doing movies. You hear a lot about movies on demand or video on demand. That's saying I can bring you the movie anytime you want it, rather than you going to get it somewhere. But again, that's taking the old things and moving it over. Our role, as I mentioned in this, is to be an important facilitator for this world as it moves forward. What we need to do in Tektronix is to make sure that all of our customers work with us and we with them to make sure that the investment that they make to move to the high definition world is an incremental one and a smart one. What I'm saying is we're about to embark on a journey, not an event. And just as television is now 50-some years old, it's going to be several years before any promise of high definition really does come to the forefront. Now, having said that, there are some early indications that quality is important. A Nielsen study of about 12 to 18 months ago said that the third reason people buy those little satellite dishes that are digital is because of the number of channels they get. The second reason is because of improved audio, and the number one reason is because of improved video quality. So video quality is recognizable, particularly if you're in a cable system somewhere out in the country and you don't get very good reception. But again, what's going to be important is that how this is communicated and how we move forward is something that needs to be explained to everyone, rich or poor, educated or not. And that's something that we, in part, working with OPV, have been trying to help do. We're starting to run high-definition clinics around the country because our customers who must begin making the investments to meet the dates that Peter mentioned are really nervous about how well people are going to accept it and whether the content's going to be there. So for all the promise that we expect out of this, having been one of the early pioneers of multimedia, which translates into text and video and voice and audio all coming over your personal computer at the same time, we know these things take a while. So there are some hurdles that we must uncover. What's important to us as consumers is that we have to be vocal about the kinds of things we want to see and be risky about the kinds of things we want to try. But to me, what's important for Portland and this area of the country is that I think we have enough of the companies and the software developers here that this could become one of the content creation capitals of the world to be able to make this go. Because once the hardware is in and once Maynard's ready to broadcast something, if he doesn't have all the content he needs, then he's not going to be happy. And my job is to keep Maynard happy. At least most of the time. So that's my perspective very quickly, and I'll turn it over to Maynard.
That was a cute line, Lucie. I'm Maynard Orme, president of Oregon Public Broadcasting. I'm delighted to be here with such an august group of people who I respect and admire. Yes, we are customers of Tektronix and Lucie, and you are our customers. So from the 35,000-foot level, I want to go down onto the ground and talk to you for a moment about how we think we'd like to apply this technology. First of all, OPB has been here for 75 years. This is our 75th year in December. We got our CP of 1922. We got our first CP for radio. Started broadcasting, I think it was in March of 1923. So this is a very important year for us, and we plan to be here another 75 years at least, if not more. One of the other important aspects about Oregon Public Broadcasting, as you know, is we're a statewide service, and we are committed to providing a wide range of instructional, educational, informational, and occasionally entertaining programs that reflect the dynamism of Oregon, of the Northwest of America, and the world. That mission will not change. We want to be the state's most important educational resource, and the resource that you can achieve the most easily. Okay, how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, we had to be an early adopter. And the reason that I feel we had to do that is that the cost of providing this service to the state of Oregon, as far as Oregon Public Broadcasting is concerned, is horrendous. We're looking at spending anywhere from $15 to $18 million to make this conversion. And we can't turn to a corporate headquarters and say, show me the money. We've got to get the money ourselves to make this conversion. So that's our task. And in many cases, large corporations will have many stations, but they will only have one per market, and the cost of making that transition is maybe $2 to $3 or $4 million. In our case, it's 5 times that much. We have to replace 5 television stations, 35 translators, interconnect the system, find the tower spaces, find the land, and make all that happen within the FCC timeframe. So this is a lot of work. We began this process 4 years ago to begin to raise this money. Incidentally, since we separated from the state of Oregon over almost 4 years ago now, we know that as a company, we can't necessarily rely on tax-based support for this, even though we will try to develop some. Most of the funding for this will have to come from the community of Oregonians, the individuals who live here. So that's the reason we jumped in early. The other reason perhaps is that 10 years ago I saw my first high-definition picture and knew at that time that that was the future for broadcasting and public broadcasting. I sit, let me say, on a couple of committees. One important one, I think, is the New Technologies Working Group. That's Public Broadcasting Service Committee that helps PBS figure out how it's going to position itself in the future. Another one is a group of 6 stations called the Digital Broadcast Alliance that has decided to take early leadership, and we are working with many companies, Tektronix, wonderfully so, Harris, Sharp, to help them and help us learn about this business and help them learn about our needs so that they can translate them for us. And that's an ongoing process, and I think will exist for some time in the future. So, in terms of being an early adopter, there are some risks. But one of the wonderful things is that when you are acknowledged as an early adopter, companies stand up and say, well, let's help you adopt early. So at the moment, we are putting on the air a digital bit stream provided by Harris. We have an antenna that was donated, and just recently we shot our very first television production in the new format, 16 by 9. It was 525 lines, but we can line double, and it looks almost as good as high definition. We got those cameras donated by Sony, and so that gives us, we think, a leg up in terms of positioning ourselves for the future. And 7 years ago, we committed to becoming a product developer worldwide. We're working with regional, national, and international companies to develop product so that we can partner with them and reduce our costs of production because of their involvement with us, and hopefully make those things happen. Now, as far as you're concerned, what does that mean? Well, now that we have this digital bit stream running, you can't see it, but we hope that the equipment, which is called a DMOD unit, that we'll be able to get within the next 4 or 5 months, will allow us to run a digital picture on our air divided into 4 or with high definition. Now, how do we do that? We are working with PBS to develop several program streams, and they will have those streams up and running probably between November and March of next year, so that you can see what digital television will look like. And as the manufacturers of those television sets start to put them in stores, and by the way, at the moment, analog set sales are dropping. I think people are preparing for this future. You can see and compare the quality of this picture, and you'll see OPB there, you'll see PBS there, you will see us there first, I hope. And we hope that that will influence you to look at this new television medium in a different way, because believe me, high-definition television, and this is, high definition again is just one aspect of this digital television capability. High definition, as has been said, is a new medium, and you will look at it differently. It's almost like 3D popping out of you if you have a big screen. It's powerful, and I dare you to be reading a newspaper and a magazine when you've got a surround sound system and a big picture staring you in the face. You don't take newspapers and magazines to the theater, and you probably won't be using them in your home unless you go into another room, because this medium is so powerful. What are we going to put on those 4 channels? Well, you're going to have our current service. You will also have a children's program service that will be expanded beyond what we currently do. We plan a GED and a K through 14 service because we can provide those in the same time frame. We're looking at how-tos. And the real unknown here is how television will deal with its interactive capabilities through vertical blanking interval lines or through digital bursts that you can use to enter your own internet or simply to pull off additional material on the television program that's available for you, whether it's text or whatever. And as Lucie says, we are really just at the very beginning of this journey, and we all have to figure it out. We don't plan to raise all the money for this conversion for probably another 4 or 5 years. And we plan, as we raise the money, to make the changes. And of course, our first priority will be Portland, since 70% of our revenue comes from Portland, even though 50% of our viewers and listeners are scattered around the state. The Portland area is critical, and we will roll out the other areas as we're able to afford changing those transmitters. Now, one of the important things to know is that public broadcasting doesn't have to meet these same timelines that the commercial stations have to meet. We have until, I believe, 2003, but I think that's a mistake. I do not want to be eating someone else's dust. I want to be there with all the other commercial stations, either before them or at the same time, so people can compare and then make their purchasing decisions. And I think it's probably time for questions now.
Thank you, Peter. Lucie and Maynard, I think our mics are working, so, you know, instead of us popping up back and forth, I'll just stay here. You folks use your microphones at the table. So that's what happens when you really get excited. It's called a digital burst.
That's it.
Okay.
And around my place, if people say, stay away from Maynard, if you talk about digital, you won't get your work done.
Well, first of all, I'm very proud of all of you that stayed within your timelines, your allotments, and because there's a lot of good information that you presented. My first question is one that, frankly, I had originally when I learned about digital. It is one that I get almost every day from readers of the column and from viewers. And I'm gonna throw it out, and I don't know who would want to answer this, but, and Peter, you touched on it. When these televisions come, when they're in the stores, Christmas of '98, does this mean I have to go out and buy one? Does it mean that I will ever have to go out and buy one? Can my television, my analog TV that I use right now, still, even after this digital age, be useful and be usable? And if so, how?
Absolutely. It does not mean that you need to rush out right away and buy in. You can keep your purchase decision about a new television on the same track you currently have it, which is it goes on working for 10 or 15 years, and then you can replace it. In fact, that's the beauty of the standard that the industry and now the government have adopted. It allows consumers to buy in at the price and feature level that they choose when they choose to do it. To be sure, to receive the new digital signal on a conventional analog set, the one you have at home today, you'd have to have a converter box. And in fact, there are already 2 companies that have announced that they will make these boxes, and they're expected to be considerably less than the price of a full-blown TV set. In effect, it's just the electronics, like in a DSS direct satellite box that would sit with your TV set, would receive the digital signal coming in off the air, strip it off the radio wave, and then decode it into a form in which your conventional TV set can display it, just as it does today. Those converter boxes will allow you to use any set that you have effectively today for as long as you choose to use them or as long as they work. So even if you buy a new set for the next couple of years, an analog set, they'll also provide a picture through the converter box. But if you buy into a new digital TV set, And a high-definition set, you could buy a standard definition set, which at a lower price would offer you crisp, sharp digital quality, or a high-definition set that will give you the full-blown widescreen HDTV quality, and both of them will have the capacity to receive any of the signals that any of the broadcasters send, and there are several choices they can use, and will have the ability, at least during this transition period, to receive conventional signals. For after all, those will go on being transmitted for many years to come, at least 10, 12 years or more, I'm sure.
And will the converter boxes be smaller than the TVs?
Please, God, yes.
They will.
Right.
And they will cost, we don't know, but they will cost $100?
Well, let's put it this way. To the extent that there's been public discussion about it, and of course our manufacturing members and others haven't really exposed exactly what they expect the price points to be, but to the extent that you can buy a DSS satellite box today for $149, and that represents something more than the real manufacturing price of all the electronics it takes, for all intents and purposes, to receive such a signal and manage it at some level, then these boxes ought to be in the hundreds, not the thousands of dollars to start, and ought to fall, I think, as all consumer electronics do, as penetration, manufacturing volume, and demand increase the numbers.
Let me just interject here. I'm going to open it up to questions from you folks, too, after maybe 5-10 minutes. So if you think of any piercing questions, you'll have time to ask them. Lucie, and maybe you're the best one to ask this. You keep hearing about, and some of you touched on it, the convergence of television with computers. After all, digital is the language of computers, as Peter mentioned. And I'm wondering, will our television sets at home, in fact, become part of our computer? This is already happening with web TV, but will our TV set of the future, maybe the not too distant future, basically be our computer screen?
I think that the TV set of the future and the personal computer of the future could potentially be in the same box. But having said that, some of us in this room are old enough to remember when we had a record player, one box, and everything that we did, 78s or whatever, down to 45 records we played on in that box. Today, at my house at least, we have a stereo wall. And it's not just because my husband likes toys. It's because each one of us will not only have choice of programming, we will have choice of equipment. And we were just talking up here earlier that 3 years ago or 2 years ago, the personal computer passed the television set in the volume of things purchased in 1 year. It used to be the television set was what everybody purchased more of. About 2 years ago, it was the personal computer. This year, it's going to be the cellular phone. And I suggest those things are all connected. So, Pete, I don't think everything will all be in one box. There's enough different things happening and enough new technology coming on. But I think having said that, it's very imperative that all of us in the business of creating the hardware and software to make this work must work in an open system standard environment where we can plug and play with everything that comes out to make the consumer's life a lot more easy. And also Maynard's life.
And we know that all of our jobs are to keep Maynard happy. So, Maynard, you talked about the 4 channels and all these program streams. I'm sort of wondering how much of it's going to be interactive. Right. Because of the digital age, it's not a one-way deal anymore. We can actually communicate with our TV or computer or whatever. And I'm just sort of wondering, you talked about some of the educational aspects of what you folks want to do. How much will be interactive? It seems to me that would be a real potential there.
Absolutely, and I think that's the piece where broadcasting in general will grow a great deal. Although I want to preface my remarks here by this statement, and that is that as much as I love interactivity disrupts the continuity of the storyteller. And we are people who like to sit around an electronic campfire and have stories told to us. And I don't think that's going to change immediately. We are humans, that's the way we communicate, that's what we like. So I think, I'm betting that the television aspect of this will probably be more powerful than the computer aspect, though I could be totally wrong. And in that regard, I think more people are going to buy television sets with an occasional interactive capability than they will buy computers sticking a little television set up on the screen to look at while they're interacting. Both will happen. There's no doubt of that. We're just talking percentages here. So initially, what television can do is I'll use a technical term here, a vertical blanking interval to provide extra data that you can just course off your screen. You can interact through some sort of web TV. That's why Microsoft wanted to get into that aspect of the business. But I think most people will still watch television from their living room and interact with it occasionally, pull up text, even use it as a gateway into their own interactive computer screens, if that's possible on the set. Then they will simply buy a lot of computers. In many homes, you'll have both. Somebody will be in one room playing with one, and somebody else will be in another room playing with another.
I open this up to any of you or all of you who want to speak about it, and that is, we talked, Peter and I were talking earlier about, the Bruce Springsteen song, 500 channels and nothing on. It seems like with digital we'll have maybe 5,000, 50,000 opportunities, or channels, if you will, all these communication streams. And I'm wondering now, the biggest gripe in TV land is that we do have all these cable channels now and all the satellite, but you start channel surfing sometimes, folks, and there isn't a whole lot on. I'm wondering now, with the communication expanding by leaps and bounds, what do you think will happen in the universe of television programming? Will it get better? Will the percentage of good stuff go down? How's that going to play out?
Well, I'm not sure if it's going to get better, because that's a creative genius that has to be involved. What will happen, though, is you'll have far more niche channels. You've got golfing channels, you'll have scuba diving channels. I mean, just go on the internet, for example, and look at all the different capabilities that are there. So I think that the open question is the quality, one of the open questions is the quality of the content. But I'm not the creator here, so maybe somebody else can add to that.
I guess I'd only add one thing, which is I think these tools provide new opportunities for the creative folks to try new things. And in fact, for the first time, for example, a movie maker who makes a widescreen movie will be able to show the movie on a television set that has a wide screen. It doesn't have to be panned and scanned, and you miss half the action when you're looking to the left half instead of the right half. In addition, with HDTV, with that element of the digital television service, you're able to show the absolute color, the real texture, and in effect, as Maynard mentioned, a near 3D experience. It is so true to life that it's positively startling. And when you blow this up on a wide screen, where because it's still so dense, you still don't see any lines or dots or creeping, crawling colors like you do on conventional sets today, it is a really moving experience. That alone, I believe, will prompt creative people to turn their energies into new forms and new directions. And I think we'll all be surprised at the result. It'll be streamed serial programming, but it'll also be partially interactive, and it'll also be different forms and different length.
So Bob Barker is not going to look any younger. That's, I think, what I heard.
I just want to chime in here, too, because I think this is a great opportunity for public broadcasting, because what people are looking for is quality information, and this will allow us to provide programs through branching opportunities that can provide a breadth of quality information and not only dealing with quality information in a deep way, but lots of different quality information programs at once. We are information to people, and commercial broadcasting is eyeballs to advertisers. That's the difference. So our mission is information. Commercial broadcasting's mission is something different. We are two separate businesses. And I think this new technology is designed for us. Now, I will make one exception, and that is sports and event programming. I think in terms of driving the sale of, and I'll speak just of high definition, not of digital alone, but sports will drive the sale of high definition programs. When you can see a professional football game, baseball game, or the Olympics or anything like that, Winter or Summer Olympics. I've seen Winter Olympics on high definition. It's stunningly spectacular. You will walk into a neighbor's house, they will have it, you'll turn to your partner and say, hey, let's forget buying that new car this year, let's buy one of those. Because it is just that powerful when you see it. And I think that's going to happen.
What does this mean for us as a society when instead of watching maybe an average of 4 hours a day of television, because of all this great stuff, we're watching 14 hours a day? I mean, is that, you know, it sounds like such just a wonderful thing and all these opportunities, yet you sort of wonder, well, are we going to all be watching more TV than ever, and what will that mean?
Television to be used, not abused, as the line goes. Discipline, Pete. That's where it's at. In the schools and at home. Again, it's a new set of tools, but it's an extraordinary breadth of them. This is a huge leap forward, and to the extent that the power of television is already known to all of us, this can be a great, powerful new device for storytelling, for information, for sharing experiences. It is a way in which I think the promise of television can really be achieved so much more strongly than the first 50 years gave us a chance to with the tools we've had in the past.
Yes, and I think focus is required as well as discipline. We have distance learning operations in 26 of our states in the U.S. What that means is we build the hardware and software, work with partners, and we have university presidents in one area teaching everybody else over these computer networks that also have television sets in them. And if you can just take that world and marry it with the high definition world and make those 4 hours that you spend educational, that's where the focus comes with the discipline. I think that's all of our responsibility to make sure that happens.
And I know as a TV columnist, it's going to make my job a lot tougher, because instead of, say, reviewing Channel 6, Channel 6 will have maybe 4 channels, something like that, and there's just going to be more and more and more on there. And I know in the digital age, you all be reading the newspapers anyway, right? Okay, good. I just wanted to...
The pay of 4 times as much, Pete.
Right, oh, it's 4 times as much, okay.
Or you could get your newspaper off the television set.
Yes, that's right, exactly.
You have enough space to provide 6 copies of the New York Times per minute, even while you're having a high-definition picture on the screen.
Yeah. Peter, do you want to ask the first at-large question here, and we'll take some from the audience?
Thank you, Pete. We've talked about the quality of video and how that will improve. Lucie mentioned how interested we are in it. You've touched a bit, though, on other uses and other advantages of digital TV. I'm concerned, I'm thinking, gee, am I going to spend $5,000 to $10,000 essentially to get sharper TV? I think maybe not for a little while. But if you've got other things that this system provides a capability of, that's something I might be interested in. Peter touched upon the use with home computers. Maynard just mentioned perhaps we can get our newspapers off of the computer, off of the HDTV. What other things like that will it do other than give us superior video? Can you give us specifics? I don't want to hear, well, you can use it for everything. That's what we used to hear about home computers. If you can be specific, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I have one example which my staff has heard interminably, and so sorry for the staff here to repeat this one. But this is truly an outside-of-the-box capability, and I'll give you one example, and there are thousands. I have a player piano that's got a MIDI interface. I can, through a digital data stream off my television set, plug into that MIDI interface and have someone playing the piano in New York and seeing the keys in my house go down as that person plays, and I can record it. And I can do that with that picture, that beautiful picture behind it with the orchestra. And you talk about a sensory experience, there's one example. You could translate it to golf, you could translate it to chess, you could translate it to to bridge. You want to play with a partner in New York, anything you want to do. It just takes your creative imagination to think about how to expand your own personal experience, what your interests are, and there will be people out there who will be trying to make that work for you.
And except for choice and variety and quality of picture, you will have, just extending what Maynard said, quality of sound. So you can be listening to programs, you can be listening to watching a symphony, only it's going to appear like you're sitting in the front row seat in Carnegie Hall. So again, you're not going to be wanting to read that newspaper when you watch certain programs, because you're going to be riveted positively by some of the things you'll see and hear.
I could add one other possibility under the rubric data broadcasting, if you will. And you have bits and pieces of this already showing up on the internet, but of course that's a wired service. Now think of an unwired service that has the capability, while you're watching television, to deliver information behind the scene. If, for example, you're an advertiser, in the course of a 30-second advertisement, while the picture is relatively still, or while the capacity to show the image isn't demanding an awful lot of the bits in the channel, you can download, to use the current terminology, or some of us who don't always like the advertising introduction, offload the information, and yet your TV set will have a little memory in it. And this memory will allow you, once the ad is over, and if you don't want to watch the next ad, to push a button and retrieve what was downloaded. Maynard talked about newspapers. In a 1-minute BMW commercial, which was done as an example of this by the 7 companies that created the so-called Grand Alliance system on which this is all built, you can download 7 megabytes, 40 floppy disks full of information in a 1-minute span while you're watching the television picture. Now, that's overwhelming. There's nothing you can do with that, but with that much information. But what you can do is you can find out all the local BMW dealers. You can find out all the car colors. You can literally flip a switch on your remote, and it gives you the opportunity to change the color of the model of the car you wanted to buy, to move around inside it like you were driving it, and to literally give you a pre-experience before you go in to confront the damn dealer that you're so worried about confronting. That's on the advertising side. Imagine what the power of that information and the editorial capability behind it is if you're doing this in an educational programming. You went to the zoo, you wanted to know more about zebras. Believe me, behind the zebra pictures are encyclopedic possibilities for studying zebras for a school project, for example.
Andrew Kaiser, City Club member. I have read in a variety of venues that there is a lot of economic opportunity for the broadcasting industry to make money in all of this. And I also understand that to broadcast HTV requires more bandwidth. And there's been some discussion as to whether the federal government should give it away free or to charge for it. Mm-hmm. And so I'd be curious to understand what your perspectives are. I understand in public broadcasting might have one perspective, but I'd be curious to know what the commercial market should expect.
I'll take a shot at that, if I may. Actually, the government decided on April 3rd of this year to complete a nearly 10-year-long process that would loan a second channel to all existing broadcasters for the purpose of launching digital television, ultimately reclaiming the channel they currently operate. So the goal here was to give all existing broadcasters, believed to be the best positioned in order to get this service out to all Americans sooner rather than later, give them the first shot. If they don't want it, somebody else can then come in and apply for it. But the channels have actually been assigned city by city, station by station. And now, over the next 2 years in the first round and ultimately 6 years, broadcasters have to build the new facility, start the new service, and ultimately try to migrate their viewers from the conventional analog television to the digital one. But they're being loaned this channel in the near term. They have to return one of those channels when this transition is done. So that's how the issue of do you pay for it or do you get it for a grace period, like some in mobile communications and others have done in such transitions in the past.
Just to add real quickly on that, we can return either channel. So if I'm on channel 35 for the experiment, the transition, I can probably go back to channel 10 in Portland or 7 in Corvallis.
John Leeper, City Club member. I've got 2 questions. First, you have spoken of this and you have spoken about DSS. Where does cable television fit in this? And is there a need for it? That's the first related question to the first one. The second one is, when are all of these multitudinous different facets of TV public presentation going to be made? Because they're all going to cost money, and you talk about this BMW being able to, change the color, do all these things, And who is going to have the money to pay for all this production?
Oh, let me take the first stab. Let me start with your second question first. There's a company called Videotron in Montreal, Canada. They're the second largest cable company in Canada. They also own the largest video rental chain of stores in Canada. They have been offering their customers interactive television since 1990. By that I mean you can watch the Montreal Expos play, and after somebody strikes out, immediately they update the statistics. Or you can watch hockey from one of 4 different positions, one of 4 different cameras. What they've learned about how people pay is once you set a price, people will never pay more. The second thing that they've learned is that people will watch pay-per-view, or by that I mean the movie that you get, order it for $2.95. That people will do pay-per-view for maybe 2 months, and then they'll stop. But these same people will come back to the video rental store every week. And the difference is that in the first case, they get a bill at the end of the month that says your basic service was $5.99, but you rented $237 worth of movies. Whereas when they go to the video rental store, it's cash and carry. You have that $10 in your pocket, you go rent 2 movies, you bring it home because you know what you're spending when you're spending it. So one of the lessons learned from that suggests that there has to be some mechanism on these receivers or some mechanism in the house to allow you to have a debit card to be able to pay for the services as you go, or you won't do it very long. And I think that is one of the options. Now back to cable, and then you guys can keep going. Back to cable, I think that anybody that has a wire or a hook into the home is going to go after the golden ring and compete. Cable companies are looking at high definition as the trigger, worldwide by the way, to get themselves to go digital. They learn from the direct satellite business that the quality was suffering, and direct satellite has taken customers away from them. So all of them who will go for the golden ring, you'll see cable companies, you'll see phone companies, by the way, you'll see utility companies who already have a link into your home, and you'll see cable companies and broadcasters all try to get some of your attention. Now in the end, they're not all going to win. The good news for you in between now and the end is that you have a choice of deciding which to go after as part of who you want to pay money to. They have to all assume that they're all going to win to at least some degree. And so from your perspective, you have the choice, and from my perspective, I sell them all equipment. So you and I are the ones that ought to be the ones that make out here for a while.
From my case, I don't know what's going to happen in terms of over-the-air cable, but certainly the 7 stations, say, in the Portland area or in any metropolitan area could gang together 25 or 30 services and compete in a free reign with cable and have people say, gee, I don't need my cable anymore. Will they do that? I don't know, because many of those commercial companies have toeholds in cable as well. So they're going to have to make their own internal corporate decisions about what they do.
Good afternoon. Charlie Swindell, City Club member. My question concerns what I think you all refer to as local terrestrial distribution. Does HDTV offer the prospect perhaps of eliminating some of the TV towers that are currently visible on the ridge lines, like in the city here in Portland? Is it going to be necessary to have 2 towers now, at least during this interim period? Can we consolidate over time? Do you know anything about what that might entail?
Sure, Peter.
Generally, most stations in most cities either have the ability to lease space on someone else's existing tower or to add an additional antenna for emitting the new signals on their current tower. There are some few places around the country, and I couldn't name them all specifically, But the studies are being made even now that either we'll have to replace a tower on the current site, meaning a stronger, newer tower to hold more weight, i.e. 2, where there used to be only 1, or to consolidate stations on the tower. For example, in San Francisco, there's a single tower siting at Sutro Tower, south of the city there, and that same candelabra antenna, or tower, is going to hold the new candelabra antennas for the new digital service, so there won't be a proliferation. Needless to say, it's a cost that broadcasters don't want to bear if they don't have to, and certainly an environmental issue that all of us are concerned about and don't want to propagate around the country. I might mention quickly as a sidebar to that same question, though, the earlier question asked about bandwidth. It turns out that terrestrial HDTV does not require, in the new digital form, any additional bandwidth. In the same 6 megahertz channel in which you currently provide one service, you can now provide, in a clean 6 megahertz channel, either the HD and some data, the HD and one other program service of a certain sort, multiple program services and data, or all these combinations we were talking about in various permutations. So the good news is the shift to all digital made that possible. In the past, there was a fear that you had to have much more bandwidth.
I'm afraid we won't have time for another question. I'm sorry. I certainly thank Pete and all of the panel for speaking with us today. Every Friday, I'm absolutely astonished personally at the level of talent and skill that exists amongst our citizens living right here in Portland with us, not only who speak to us, but to those of you who ask wonderful questions from the floor. I'm certainly one of the people who thought that high-definition television referred to the fact that Maynard was going to begin giving us a glossary before some of the complicated programs that we see on public television. But today we've learned that high-definition television is indeed much more than that. And I thank all of you for giving this extraordinary view of the future. Thank you very much. We stand adjourned. That was really interesting.
Well, I hope we didn't confuse people. That's...